the arm on the Zodiac's writing, which is very similar to how he constructed his lowercase k with this leg coming off of the middle of the arm, the right arm of the K. I found that inside of his capital K's, he actually used a loop, and when he would exit, it would cause that leg of the K to come out at the same point off of the arm that occurs in the lowercase k's with the Zodiac and Q34 over here. So basically we can take pretty much one of these K's, put it over here, and see that the exit point or the starting point of that leg of the K occurs in the same point where Jack exits his K when he writes a normal one. Noting that particular thing, we only found one lowercase k in Jack's writing, and that's because he tends to use an uppercase or capital K in the middle of lowercase printing, making the K look much larger than the rest of the letters around it. We can see here, though, that the exit on this leg of this K did occur here at the midpoint of the arm, just as we had indicated was occurring in the capital letters and then in the disguised lowercase k's. The slant is pretty much identical and dead on. We can actually lay this over many of the Zodiac's k's and find that that rightward slant is there. The exit of that particular lower leg comes out at the same point as what occurs with the Zodiac's lowercase k's, and then the Zodiac went ahead and in Q63 ended up using uppercase capital K's in the middle of lowercase printing. This is the only communication that I found that on, but it substantiates that the person is probably used to using this uppercase capital K, and these lowercase k's were what they were attempting to use to disguise this particular usage. However, this usage is identical to Jack Tarrance in many ways: shape, form, the entrance, exits of particular strokes. You can see there the top, the spacing between the stem and the arm at the top is the same. The exit for the leg is the same, even though if it does wind up a little bit straighter out rather than downward. Capital L's Jack makes with a degree of slant that causes it to look like a fallen over V. And this is pretty similar to what we find inside the Zodiac's writing, is that, again, that sharp back left corner of the writing, and we see that these match up beautifully with that. Slant. Dead on. Lowercase l's will be handled in another slide. Capital M's, Jack tends to use a 4-stroke M that he actually stops and begins the next stroke with each turn of the pen. We do see down here with the Zodiac's writing that this individual attempted to use very, very long legs for some reason, making it look unproportionate to the center portion here, where a single line was drawn to kind of make a rounded section. But we can see that about Q60 the Zodiac began using a construction that caused the middle section of the M to come straight down and almost square off with the left and right leg. We see that here again, and we see it here in Q64. We also see it here. This is more similar to Jack's writing because he is very used to bringing that middle section right down to the baseline, or right down to the point where it meets up with the left and right leg of the M. So we see that here these are probably more habitual of an individual because they are very rarely left behind, while the rest you see they attempted to use very, very odd construction. Lowercase m's, same thing here. Jack uses a 4-stroke capital construction of the lowercase m in his writing in the middle of other lowercase writing, but what we do see by pulling these over the top of each other is the space between these two authors' m's are identical. The set down of the midpoints set right down on top of each other. The beginning and ending of the m's are almost dead on. Capital letter N's, again, we have the same slant, the same basic spacing between strokes, right within range, coming out just like you would expect them to come out if this was coming out of one person. Even with something as drastic as this, we can see that that is within both of their ranges. Lowercase n's, again, are another capital construction that Jack uses in the middle of lowercase printing, and because there's 4 strokes involved, it ends up looking like a W. One of the things I note about that W, however, is that you can actually pick the W up and use the first 3 strokes of this letter N, lay it over the top of the Zodiac's writing, and find that the construction, shape, slant, everything is identical. So basically all the Zodiac did was drop off this first section of the letter N and came up with his version of how he was going to disguise his writing. We can see that Jack did use this lowercase n in K98, and of course it basically lines up with just about everything as well, as far as the point in the top of the N, which direction it's going in, the space between the initial stroke, which is the left stem of the N, and then the hump of the N, spaced right where they would appear to be very similar between each other. Capital O's, angular, egg-shaped, laid over to the right. Basically what we're seeing here inside of the Zodiacs is the same type of construction. We can even see there the set down of that. Lowercase O's, Jack uses a cursive version of the lowercase o in his printing, and we can see that that has occurred in the Zodiac's writing as well, even to a degree where overlaying particular O's from Jack to the Zodiac, not only does the shape and slant line up, but the placement of the loop on the inside of the O, making it a cursive O, is also in pretty much a very similar position as the Zodiac. Capital P's, we have the same slant bar, same peak or bubble on the P where it is angular, pointing out to about 3 o'clock, basically flat on top rather than rounded, with a very, very steep incline on the bottom of the bubble of the P. That can also be seen inside of the door of the Lake Berryessa murder, where the P has the steep incline, flat top, and again a similar slant on that slant bar as Jack carries. Lowercase p's, again, we've got that same flat top, pointed bubble to the 3 o'clock hour, slant increase in the actual bowl itself, and again the slant on this particular stem here. You can pick that up and bring it over and see that that fits right on inside the P from the Lake Berryessa car door. Again, we have the same rise in the bottom portion of the bubble of the P, the flattened top, a little bit of a deeper slant on this particular P, but still right within range. And then of course we can see many of those different types of P's inside of the Zodiac and Jack that are very, very similar to one another in shape, slant, and form. Jack uses a cursive Q inside of his lowercase printing, and we can see by cross-referencing at least 2 of these cursive Qs that we are working with pretty much the same person. We have what I refer to as the figure 8Q executed by Jack. I'm going to give it a little spin here. We know that their slants range from left to right pretty easily, but my point here is that the form of this is so identical that it actually lays down perfectly over the top of one another, ending points, the darkened area where the pen retraced itself, it is in the same place on both of these particular letters. Then with Q34, I can take down and do the same exact thing, thereby placing that cursive Q. Of course, the bottom tail is not as long as the Q27, but the top bubble fits right directly inside the angular portion on the back side of these Qs right here, where it angles out, occurs in both of these authors, and it gets thinner at the bottom, as we see there. Capital letter R's matching up in various different ways. Of course, we see all the different ways that Jack would use the capital letter R. I did note here in Q7, we see this very short leg on the right side coming off of a curved stroke at the bottom, leaving this tiny little leg on the left-hand side of the stem here. You can actually find that up here in Jack's handwriting. Again, we have the exit and we have the little tiny leg right here to the back side with that exit coming out. And when you pick these guys up and lay them over the top, you can see that that exit and the curve is exactly the same on the bottom. You can take this particular arm, bring it down here, and see that the bowl ends in the same place. The leg extends out on the right hand side by the same degree between these two R's. And then again, we can come down here and bring this one and see that the bowl at the top is very similar in size and in shape, and the exit of the leg, while it may exit downward a little further on Jack's rather than straight out like on the Zodiacs, you're pretty much getting the same form, same shape, same size. Lowercase r's, they've spent a lot of time looking for the person who could execute or did execute these checkmark R's, as we refer to, because they do not have a very long stem, so they look more like V's or more like check marks. So as I'm going through Jack's stuff, of course, I mean, because he's the author of the Zodiac letters, we find that he does actually execute this very same checkmark R. And of course, the stem is basically just as big as the Zodiacs. The exit stroke comes out at the same height when lined up with those stems. Same angle, same degree. Take something like that, lay it down. You can see how it just places perfectly right over the top. Capital S's, notably he has angular curves on the bottom and sometimes on the top. Kind of goes back and forth. Sometimes he has wider, open, bubblier curves, but most times he has an angular bottom portion, as you can see in many of these letter S's, which is something that we do find if he's not attempting to make it big and round. We find an angular or a point at the both top and bottom portion of the S's. This one right here was very similar once laid down with the top portion of the S and the way it curves around. Now, of course, the bottom's slightly different, but then we can pick up the bottoms the same in many others. It just happens to be one of the ranges of variation that Jack has. Again, we have a lineup with the top portion and how it executes itself back down to the bottom. Lowercase s's, I used the double S for my examination here, just to kind of show you the spacing between the S's and how they occur. And you can notice that the first S is slightly shorter than the second S, but our spacing between the two, the lineup of these particular S's are perfect. Here's another set of double S's. We'll bring those right on down. Again, line up spacing, beginning and ending of these, looking great. Lowercase t